A question homeschoolers are often asked is, do you follow a curriculum? In this video, Riki and I share our ideas and tips on homeschool curricula. Riki, kick us off. What does a homeschool curriculum look like to you?
It's got to be personalised. So just like personalised medicine, which would be ideal for each person's genetic background or each person's need. Same thing with education and learning. So personalised education. The curriculum would come from the child and the child's needs and where the child wants to go and what the child's interested in, rather than any sort of protocol or top-down approach of what someone else thinks that child should have or needs. The child would guide the way.
I think you covered all bases there. And one of the most important things you said was where the child wants to go. I mean, that's really it, isn't it? That's the objective. If you looked at, say, a bodybuilder and a tennis player, they both are into sport.
But where do they want to go?
Exactly. Now, I can't imagine Novak Djokovic winning 23 Grand Slams with the body of Arnold Schwarzenegger. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So he looked at his objective, which was to play tennis, and he needed speed, stamina, flexibility, all sorts of things, hand-eye coordination, and they're the things he had to develop. No one called Arnold Schwarzenegger a failure because he couldn't serve a tennis ball. So that's really important, isn't it? Where the child wants to go.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the challenges of homeschooling is, where do you even start? In the home, I guess. It's in the name. But aside from that, where do we start with what do you teach the child? And that's one of the biggest stumbling blocks, I think, for a lot of parents. Is like, what do I actually do? What do I need to know? So I thought this video would be a good idea just to share the basic steps in building a curriculum for any child.
Just follow the child, I would say. Children are born curious.
Yeah.
Just observe what they're wanting to explore and be the facilitator. Just keep providing more of that or keep providing more stimulation to see what is the thing that makes them excited.
Yeah, and I don't think that's that hard to do because, like you said, kids are born curious and they're always reaching for stuff. They want to do the next thing. And I don't know why, but sometimes we get into this habit of setting these limits. No, you can't touch that. No, you can't do this. Why? Like, isn't that what we want to do? We want to prod things. We want to find out what happens next. That's just the scientific method. If I do this, this happens. Oh, cool. And kids are born scientists, aren't they?
Yeah. And we just need to create spaces that are safe for them to explore, and as they move and as they extend out into the world, to be able to have spaces where they can. Well, you don't have to say no all the time, where you've just provided everything for them to be able to explore freely. And you know they're going to be safe because you've set it up so that it's safe, so that you don't have to interfere and let them just explore.
And in the spirit of following a child's interests, I just want to share a couple of stories about people I know in my life. I hang out with a few guitarists, 3 in particular. Of the 3, only 1 can read music. They're all exceptional, by the way. Only 1 can read music, and that 1 can't read tab, but they're brilliant. One of them is on par with Mark Knopfler. No kidding, he's world class. He's a soul musician. He's a real musician. He hears things and he can play them. He plays what he hears in his head. He can play what he feels in his heart. That's special. Now, he doesn't have any formal training. He's released albums, by the way, which are fantastic, and he doesn't read music. And he said to me, look, Jimi Hendrix couldn't read music. That's all you need to know. And I thought, wow, here I am trying my best to read music at a late age because I think, oh yeah, it's something that you should do. If you're a musician, you should be able to read music and be literate. But I'm not hearing this. I'm being a machine. And it really shows the art of living. You know, you've got to feel it. It's like dancing and just learning steps. Or imagine having robotic conversations and only being able to read an auto cue. It's the same thing, whereas, you've got to feel life. And I really love that. This same person is also a martial artist. And we do a lot of striking together. At the moment, we're focusing on boxing. And I asked him, would you like to do some groundwork with me? And he said, look, I'm not interested in that stuff. If you want to teach me anything, just teach me the basics so I don't end up on the ground. So that's him creating his own curriculum right there. He's saying, I'm not a ground fighter. Now, imagine failing a guy like that who would absolutely whip me in a real fight. Imagine failing him saying, oh, well, you can't do this. Well, that's a red cross right there. You're not good enough. You didn't pass. Well, you don't have to do that component. Also, if you go and join a guitar class, what's the teacher going to ask you the first time you show up? They're going to say, what kind of music do you want to play? That you don't walk in, they go, okay, here's our curriculum. They stick it in your face and say, you've got to learn all this. I'm into Taylor Swift. Okay, we're going to start with Bach. Okay, we're going to learn some really nice classical tunes. Did you not hear me? But that's what we do to kids every day, don't we? And also we have a friend who has an almost 3-year-old son who loves train stations, trains probably as well, and electrical appliances. There's a lot of opportunities there to just keep going with it, isn't it?
You could just bring a little bag of tools with you whenever you go for a walk. How often do you see old appliances chucked on the side of the road?
Very often.
Bulk waste collection. And just explore it, open it up, get the screwdriver, see what's inside that PC or see what's inside that toaster, you know. There's so many opportunities to learn just on your everyday journey.
You just said to bring tools along. So that's a whole other thing to pursue there. Tools. So you're learning about these things that you use with your hands.
Dexterity.
That's going to move on to electric tools, such as an electric screwdriver, maybe a drill. So you're building up these skills, confidence as well.
Yeah.
You'll be cutting cords, which means you'll have to learn how to use scissors and clippers or whatever it is that you're going to be using. So that's a lot of stuff that you can just add on to one little activity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course with the trains.
Yeah. You know, reading the train station, where are you? You know, Gordon, you know, like rereading it out. Or where's the train going? What direction's it heading? What time does the train come? How long does it take to get there? You know, all those sorts of things.
So you're learning direction, time, reading, of course, because you're reading all these station names, geography of the city. You're seeing the colours of the different train lines, so you're learning your colours.
Yeah, and the way, and town planning, how do you plan a city where you've got all the trains? You know, so many different areas that you could explore.
Be a lot of counting there too, counting how many stops do we have until we get to our destination.
Yeah, and then express trains, ones that only stop at major stations. You know?
But you'll have to travel further than Chatswood because then you can count more. Gordon to Chatswood's nothing. But yeah, there's so much opportunity just following one simple interest. So I would sum up that point as fool around, find out. You know, muck around with the kids, let them experiment.
Yeah.
You never know what they're going to be into. You buy them a tennis racket, they decide to use it as a guitar. Okay. Maybe
or a sledgehammer.
Yeah, okay. Maybe you want to break things. Okay, let's get a hammer, a real hammer, and some rocks. Let's say you smash them. Okay, you want to build something. Okay, maybe you're into that.
Yeah.
So it's a real experimental and creative process, and that makes it fun. And that really builds a great relationship between the child and parent as well. So fool around, find out.
And the pressure's off in that instance, because you're really just following the child's lead and making available more of what they're seeking.
Yeah.
And it's easy.
An argument I have heard is that, well, what if my child isn't into anything? Just keep fooling around.
Yeah.
Just do more and more things. Yeah. Just expose them to this. Oh, you weren't into that? Okay, I'll try this.
Yeah.
You weren't into rap? I'll play some EDM for you. It's all just a fun exploration of everything in the world. So you fooled around and maybe you're lucky enough to stumble upon a core interest. We certainly have. So Big Jimmy, he's into waste management and garbage trucks. Little Jimmy, our 8-year-old, we named them the same. It was weird. We had a bit of a falling out over it.
Thing 1, thing 2, you know.
Yeah, it's easier that way. Whereas little Jimmy's into video games. And that's something that a lot of parents are judgmental over. Screen time. You know, that's an argument for another day. So we've got 2 boys who have found a core interest, and it's about pursuing that from that point, and how do you do it in a balanced, healthy way. And we've been lucky because we've been able to use those phenomena as learning tools. It's kind of like an anchor point, and the reading, writing, arithmetic can all orbit around that. Which has made it much easier for us, hasn't it?
And not just reading, writing and arithmetic. It's so much more. There's a lot of self-regulation going on. There's a lot of, ethics and all sorts of things sort of stem off these interests, which is, makes the job really easy.
Yeah, so pretty much everything a child needs to learn, if you're looking at this mainstream school curriculum, can be covered by these phenomena that the children are into. So our eldest son read a lot of stuff on waste management when he was young, reading brochures from trade publications, that sort of thing. Our youngest son learnt to read by playing The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which was a huge thing. We even bought him the official guidebook. That way we thought, this will be an incentive for him to read it. And it didn't work. So it was really just the text on the screen that got him going in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then later when he was looking for something, how do I find this thing? And then he'd turn to the manual. Yeah.
And it almost happened like magic. I feel like I had very little to do with his reading. I feel like he just learnt to read. He just read naturally. It was quite beautiful.
Yeah, it was. It was.
And now he's finished the game and mastered it and totally maxed it out. So how good are our kids at reading and writing and arithmetic? Well, we know, don't we?
Yeah.
We sit alongside them. We've watched them all day. We've heard them read. We've heard them read to other children, which has been beautiful. And to be honest, I didn't actually know that our youngest could read that well until I heard him read to a 3-year-old child. And I was like, wow, I didn't know he had it in him. His expressions were beautiful. But you might be wondering, okay, so do we test them on this stuff in their curriculum, their personal curriculum? Riki, what's your approach to testing?
I think it's unnecessary in terms of, say, school testing. I imagine that in some instances it does more harm than good.
Okay. So, Riki, without testing, what's the alternative?
Be present, be aware, be available to walk alongside in the journey. So you'll be able to see where, oh, wow, okay, I can see that, like those things like time on task type things like practicing how to write, practicing handwriting, you can see when, oh, okay, they haven't practiced handwriting for a while, and you can see that. You can see, oh, they're not as confident, or they're not as, not necessarily confident, but that, it's not as legible,
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to go, well, how can we find more opportunities to practice that without saying, okay, now you have to practice your writing and that sort of thing, to sort of use, again, their interest. So, well, how can we, even if it's writing rude things or whatever it is, to practice use those muscles in a way that you can't really practice any other way other than to spend time on that task of learning how to write. So you don't need to test them. You can see, you're there with them all the time, and you can see the gaps or the things that they might need more of. It's like not a test every day, but it's an observation every day. Yeah, there's no need for an exam.
What about to prepare them for big formal exams, though? For example, if they want to get into university and they have to do their high school certificate or whatever the equivalent is in your country or state, what about that? What about getting them ready for that? That's a real life sort of thing. That's not really a real life thing, but it is.
If there's a desire there, they'll want to jump through whatever hoops they need to jump through to get to that destination, like we were talking about earlier. Where do they want to go? If they want to learn how to build hydraulics for a garbage truck or something, then you go, well, gee, I'm going to need to know this kind of maths, or what do I need? What steps do I need to take to get into that course that will lead me to be able to build that garbage truck? So at an appropriate time, when that child is thirsty for that particular thing to unfold, then of course you can do bridging courses, you can do, you can cram or whatever when the interest is there. But I think grinding away and going, well, in 15 years' time you're going to want to do this, so let's do it now, sort of thing. But I think, of course, expose the child to the foundations of the skills they might need when you suspect that they might want to do a course like that, or that sort of study later down the track. Of course, create some situations through their interest where they can learn those foundations and then build upon those when it becomes more complex.
I also want to discuss the point that tests are pretty flawed. How many people do you know who have crammed and sometimes a pass mark is 40%. I've heard of courses where they lower the pass mark because no one can pass it. So it just shows how important that is. It's just a scam, really, isn't it? It's just a box ticking exercise. So cramming is another form of studying to the test. So people are learning how to pass tests, but not necessarily understanding the core concepts. And that's a real danger. They say P's make degrees. So really, the university degree can often just be proof that I can read. That's essentially all it says. I'm not an idiot. Because quite often people get a degree and enter a field that's got nothing to do with the degree. So what was the point? Well, it's just some sort of validation that this guy isn't a total idiot. That's all. It's like, okay, we'll take that. That's enough. So testing does have its flaws too, doesn't it?
And here in Australia, we have standardised testing. It's called NAPLAN, which is, I believe, every second year. In my after-school art class, I often get the opportunity to overhear what kids are saying. And they will talk about NAPLAN, and they'll talk about the best years and say, oh, yeah, year 3, that's a really bad year. Don't worry, year 4 is going to be great. You don't have NAPLAN. And I was thinking, wow, it's not like having a bad day. It's like, oh, yeah, that's a bad year. And I'm thinking,
what a write-off.
What a write-off. Yeah, I just think, oh, that's really sad to hear.
It is.
That the kids are feeling, oh, yeah, don't worry about it. Scrap that year. It's like, scrap a whole year, because of the testing. And I often hear teachers saying that they teach to the test. That's what they're focusing on, is just to get those kids, because it reflects, I guess, badly on the teacher if the kids are not passing, and it reflects badly on the school. And so it's not about learning, it's about passing the test.
Yeah, and adding to the school's reputation.
I really loved John Holt's approach when he was, before he was sort of a homeschooling advocate or an unschooling advocate. He was a school teacher, and he would say on the first day when children would come into class, he would say, okay, you don't have to worry about your end of year report. You're all getting an A. So now that you know that, now let's just get on with the business of playing and learning.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to worry about that part.
Yep.
And the kids were like, oh, what? This is amazing. So I really liked that approach where it was forget about the testing, forget about the mark, forget about all that stuff, and let's just get on with the joy of learning.
Yep, that's beautiful. And if you're thinking life does throw up tests, yeah, but in totally different conditions.
Yeah.
You know, when you have to do a test in real life, what happens? If you were struggling with something at work, you'd read the manual. You know, you get told all the time, have you Googled it? Have you checked this? Have you checked that? Have you called this department? Okay, so you haven't solved the problem. You've got to escalate it to tier 2 support. They couldn't solve it. You escalate it to tier 3. Eventually it gets to another level. That's how you problem solve in real life. They're the real life tests. When I've had something challenging in my life, I go straight to Riki, right? I don't go...
We brainstorm with...
absolutely. But I don't sit there going, well, I need to solve this on my own in 60 minutes. You know? And I'm only allowed to bring my calculator in. I discuss it. We share ideas. It's what you do. So why do we force this? Because we don't trust kids to learn. And this isn't conspiratorial and this isn't some communist propaganda or anything, but employers need to know that this person knows what they're doing when I hire them. That's the other thing. It tells employers who's worth more, essentially. That's, again, I'm not a communist, okay? just letting you know. So that's the testing side of things. Something I do believe in very much in life is trial by combat. That's how you find out, right? I thought I was a good footy player. Guess what? I'm not. I got on the field and I got smashed, right? I played at a certain level. Oh, wow, it's really good. Got to this level. Yeah, pretty good. Got to this level. Yeah, pretty good. Got to the next level. Boom. There are levels to this game. And that's how you find out. And that's a real life test. And that's a really positive experience for everybody. It's like, okay, that's my limit. I'm going to go back here now. Big fish, small pond sort of thing. And that's okay. I've recently found that out about guitar too. You know, I play at home and Ricky's like, oh, wow, you're sounding really good. And I'm like, yeah, this is sounding good. There's a difference between playing guitar and performing guitar. And I've tried performing with a certain group and it's not pretty. They're facts, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, but essentially that's trial by combat. I'm finding out in the real world situation that I'm not good enough. And that's fine. Then you go back and then you learn, you get better and better. And then you go back again, you fail again. And you just repeat that process until you get over that hump and you're good enough. I'm big into martial arts as well. And quite often you have to do a grading to get your next level, to get another belt. So in some arts, it's based on attendance. It's a bit like homeschooling. Your instructor watches you and says, yep, you know, you've shown up to a lot of classes. You're actually quite proficient in this now. We're going to advance you to the next level. There's different approaches to it. I like both. They're fine. Real life testing is very different to the kind of testing that happens in school. Whereas in martial arts, I think that a real life combat situation is simulated quite often by the grading. So we can learn so much simply by following our interests, our child's interests and our own interests for ourselves. By the time we get to a certain age, let's just say 18 arbitrarily, what should we know?
How to be healthy. In every possible way. That would be my priority. Self-care, self-knowledge, beginnings of it, of course, but having a toolbox, a toolkit to know how to care for yourself emotionally, mentally, physically, nutrition, all those things, because a healthy person can learn anything, really.
That's a really good point. Actually, if you can read, you can learn.
Yeah.
Riki, I just checked my notes and the very first thing I had was self-care and then I wrote self-knowledge next to it. So I agree with you. I mean, what's the point of getting through all this if we can't even take care of ourselves? So there's so much to learn there. And to me, that's the ultimate outcome, to build a solid person, someone with self-esteem, self-love, and is capable of loving others and themselves, which means you'll need interpersonal skills, effective communication skills. These are the things to me that we must emphasize.
I know that we just threw that health thing in at the end, but all of those steps along the way, following a child, letting a child unfold in their own time, in their own way, and valuing their interests, even if it's looking at portaloos, those, even if it was something, even if
I am glad our child didn't develop that interest.
But,
imagine walking up to a labourer, hey mate, do you mind if I just have a look in there what you did? What the? You laid a brick, right?
Yeah, we used to have to open up bins, like when I was carrying our eldest, even in a little carry, and he wanted to open up every single garbage bin. What's in that one? What's in the yellow one? He was signalling to me. He couldn't even speak yet, but he wanted to see what was in it. So I had to leave my ego at the door and open up every single bin. And people went, oh, that poor woman, she's looking through the bins with her child. But
I thought the same thing, and I knew you.
And he just wanted to see why is that lid yellow, and why? Oh, okay. Yeah. So, and he learnt so much from that. But if he wanted to look at portaloos, that would have been, a hard thing.
That's next level.
That's next level. But if I had validated his interest,
taken stool samples
in sewerage and waste, that kind of waste management, then if I had suppressed it and said that's dirty, that's disgusting, that's revolting, keep away from that, you'll get sick, all those sorts of things, which we could have done with the garbage bins. We could have said, oh, don't touch that, that's dirty, that don't look at that, that's filthy, oh, no, you don't want to be a garbo, that's gross, And we could have suppressed it, and who knows who he would be today.
Yeah, and that would affect his self-esteem. When you shut someone down, it definitely affects their self-esteem.
Yeah, so going back to the goal of a healthy person who feels confident and excited about the future and about life, I guess hopefully all those things along the way where their natural curiosities have been fostered and validated and supported, then hopefully over all those years that you would have a young adult who feels secure in their interests and secure in where they want to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we look at the outcome is a healthy, balanced adult.
Yeah.
So how do you invest in that? Well, you don't shame them.
Yeah.
You encourage them. You essentially fill them with love. So I think that's the challenge for us as homeschool parents. It's to be as loving as we can all the time, to always be switched on with love and to keep sharing that. That's our job, really. Our kids can learn. They're fine. Kids are smart. Like Riki said, they're naturally curious. Let's let them do that, but just make sure that we wrap them up in love, give them all the encouragement and support that they need.
Yeah, and they're sort of the rails, I guess. That's the rails. The love is the rails and the support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're building a curriculum, that's what we should be thinking of as the end goal. I want a happy, balanced child. And of course, we want a child who can survive in the world. So we balance that with practical skills. We do need a basic level of arithmetic, and that will change depending on what you do with your life. If you want to be a high-level engineer, then you will need to know certain things, mathematical concepts that someone who, let's just say, is a podcaster would need to know. And that's totally fine. If you want to be a classical guitarist, you need to know all these things. You need to know the notes of the guitar all up and down the neck. If you just want to strum with your friends, then this is all you need to know. You need 3 chords. That's it. And if you look at our eldest son with his music, he's been playing in a homeschool band and he doesn't want to be the next Mozart. He's not really that interested. He's there to hang out and I wanted to expose him to something new. Again, fool around and find out. This might plant a seed for the future. It might just be the only music he ever plays in his entire life. That's okay. So he's just learning a few chords on the piano and just kind of moving that around. And that's it. That's fine. Yeah. He doesn't need to learn to read music at this level. Maybe he'll go, this is really cool. And then he'll go off and do it.
Yeah.
So look at your objectives. I think that's the most important thing. Be functional. And all kids want to be functional. All kids want to be good at something and be able to do something that brings in the meat. I always think of us as cavemen, hunting an animal and bringing it back to the cave. We all have to have that ability. But as humans, we all have to pursue happiness as well and meaning in life. So we balance those out with the curriculum and we're fine. So I hope that's been helpful. I think we waffled on a little bit, but the gist of it is let's love our kids. Let's let them explore. Let's support them in their exploration of themselves and of the world.
And if you do need to tick off certain criteria, say, for example, homeschool registration, your child can actually meet those outcomes in the curriculum and you can tick those off just by following your child's interest.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope this has helped you in some way. It's certainly helped me. Sometimes I get carried away and I get lost in the whole idea of homeschooling, but I feel like this has allowed me to take a step back and really reevaluate our philosophies and the way we go about things. Thank you.
Thank you.